I am joined from an undisclosed location in northern Idaho by the great and notorious Darryl Cooper, otherwise known as Martyr Made. And I wanted to, we haven't seen each other in a little while, but I wanted to just sort of introduce sort of our relationship to the audience, just so people know. We've known each other for like 10 years.
Yeah, I think 2014 was when Connor fought Jose Aldo, and that was I was over at your house for that. So yeah, right around
Right.
then.
So 11 years, yeah. And at that point, neither one of us had a podcast. Um, I hadn't, I had not even started my current book. And I'm not even sure, were you gonna even do anything like this at that point? Do you
No,
remember?
I mean, I was still in my obsessive reading about the early history of Zionism phase. Like I was just obsessively reading about it, but I hadn't gotten to the point yet where I was talking so much about it to my friends that one of them finally said, "Dude, I don't want to hear it. Just start a podcast." And so I hadn't
Yeah.
gotten there yet.
Yeah, so we actually met basically through martial arts.
Yeah.
And a love of martial. I was into Muay Thai and you were major roller. Are you still rolling, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, I have to drive 45 minutes to get to a place up here, but I do
I
it when I
bet.
can. And next year, I've got a big workshop out here, and as soon as I build a barn next year that I can put my tractor in, I'll put
Ooh.
some mats down. And I've been talking to people, some of my buddies here around the area, and some of the high school wrestling team and stuff, and we're gonna get out here and start a little club. So
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing in Idaho. So yeah, and then I think, and then 3 years later, I started Unregistered, and then you started your podcast, I think around that time or shortly after that, and I started hearing about how great your podcast was, and sure was. Although I think you were a little too favorable toward the Zionists, I will say.
that's funny. The Zionists don't think so.
No, I don't actually. I don't actually. I think it was an actually fantastic way to set it up because yes, I mean my so I don't think you know this, but my ancestors, my mother's family came from Odessa in the late 19th century.
Yeah,
But they were the
it's a
smart, but
wild city back then, man.
they were the smart ones though. They when the Zionists approached them and said, "Hey, come to Palestine and have a farm," they were like, "No, we're good. We're going to go to New York instead."
Yeah.
And therefore, I have never had to don a uniform or kill an Arab because of that. And my son is perfectly safe and always will be so long as he stays
Have
in.
you read much specifically about like Odessa during that period?
Oh
Like
yeah.
read like Odessa Tales or some of the dude, it was a wild west crazy ass city back then.
Yeah. Well, these were the worst and biggest pogroms, is what we're talking about for
Yeah.
what, 20-year period, 30-year period
Yeah, yeah.
across Ukraine, but especially in Odessa, which also was the center of Zionism. As Odessa, I believe that most of the Zionist activists were based there
Yeah,
at
that's where
that time.
Jabotinsky was from
Right.
and yeah,
That's right.
several others, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so then you and I do our podcast, and Israel is not at war, at least not as no, it's not at a big war at least at that time, and there's no Ukraine war, and foreign policy is kind of quiet, and so I tend, I do other things on my podcast, and you're doing your own thing. Um, and we hung out variously since then, but then, of course, last was it October, you were on Tucker Carlson, as everybody knows, and I was watching it, and I had sort of heard maybe from you or somebody that you were working on World War II now, and I didn't know what angle you were going to take, although I was sure it was going to be interesting. And it was just funny having worked on this book for 10 years. I've been working on this book for 10 years, and much of that is about World War II, and I'm doing a full revisionist history of World War II in this forthcoming book, which will be published next year. And watching you talk about it for, I think it was just all of 5 minutes or so, or maybe 10 minutes, I was just thought, wait, Darryl and I, because we knew I'd never talked about this stuff, but when you describe Churchill as being psychotic, I mean, it's obvious to me. If you just read him for a minute, I mean, especially in his discussions around the war and his war aims and his tactics and strategies, and then, of course, with India, but we can talk about that later, but yeah, so clear to me. And then, but you really nailed it in a way that almost it's like it makes me excited and a little scared at the same time because I've known for 10 years that when my book is published, I'm going to experience at least a little bit of what you experienced, which was the full weight of the establishment coming down on your head. And that's not an exaggeration. I mean, the establishment, by that I mean the cultural establishment, the institutions and the people who run them that kind of define normal, respectable culture in the West, they did everything they possibly could to discredit an amateur historian, podcaster,
Yeah.
short of, sending in black ops to take you out, whatever. But I mean, and who knows? Well, yeah. The Mossad headquarters did get hit, didn't it, recently by Iran? So maybe
Yeah,
there's some chance of
yeah.
surviving
Yeah,
this.
Eric Weinstein asked me if I wanted to visit Israel with him. I was like, no. It's like I've been there enough times. In a vacuum, yeah, I'd love to go back and visit Jerusalem again, but no, thank you. They're gonna have to fly to Idaho if they want to kill me.
They're going to James Forrestal you.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so yeah, there's no tall buildings in Idaho. That's the good news. They can't
That's
push you up.
true. Whatever happens, I didn't kill myself.
You're not suicidal, Daryl.
No.
Why would you be? You live in fucking Idaho. Um, so I just thought it was amazing. Oh, and I was going to say that the most amazing thing that you said, which again, it's been in the front of my head for years, is you said it exactly right. Forget the exact words, but you said whoever researches this topic, World War II, because you call it, I think the text of the
Hmm.
American global empire, which of course it is. The narrative, the official history of World War II is absolutely and has been the text, the guiding principles and narrative for all American foreign policy and even a lot of domestic policy since then,
Yep.
right? You said the person or the people who reinvestigate this, who look into this with a new, fresh lens, generations past the boomers who were indoctrinated in this stuff, would you call it a very, very fertile ground?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is the most fertile ground. When I began doing my serious research into World War II 10 years ago, that was obvious to me that there is so much, and it's amazing if you go into any research library, how many stacks will be devoted to just World War II books, right? But it's shocking how most of them say the same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and most of them say nothing new. But you will find I say this to anybody listening right now, if you go do this work with a critical eye and with no, for whatever reason, Daryl and you and I don't have that thing, or we have the thing where we immediately look through or around the dominant narrative, right? It's the narrative is given to us, and then you and I are just built in this way, I guess. We just want to know what's around the corner there. Anybody who does this, I promise you, I guarantee it, especially if you take Daryl's work or my work and then just riff on it with your own research, you will find vast expanses, really, of untrammeled territory. I mean, you can revise almost every single part of the narrative that we are
Yeah.
taught.
I
Yeah.
mean, anytime you run into, and I'm sure you ran into this in a few different areas when you were doing renegade history and just throughout your career in general. But when you run up against an event or a period that really is like a load-bearing myth, for especially when, I mean, you're talking about like domestic and global power relations are like based on this to a large degree. Something that's carrying that much along with it and is mythologized that much so that there's taboos in the case of World War II, literally where you can go to jail in a lot of countries for saying things that are pretty easy to to prove, really. I mean, like, you know what I mean? And like
Yes.
I've been told after my Tucker thing, I got told from somebody at the State Department that they didn't have like confirmation on it exactly, but they told me it would not be wise to visit several countries in Europe
Oh, Jesus.
because they probably turned my ass around or put me in a cooler for a couple days. And so, and I mean, I think everybody that watched it for the most part, unless they, sort of came upon it later after the blow up and they were like looking to see what this evil guy said about, World War II. People who just saw it from a neutral stance, or they were kind of just mainly confused. Like, wait, what did he say? It was so crazy.
Right.
Like, why is the New York Times and Washington Post and the White House issuing an official denunciation of this guy? I don't understand. And yet, like, it's because, there's a lot riding on the World War II myth. And so there's so many taboos set up around it that even honest historians, like they'll just, maybe they won't lie, but they'll just avoid certain questions because it's just not worth it. I mean, especially back in the day for more conventional historians, like if talk about like the weight of the establishment coming down on me. 10 years ago, they would have destroyed me 100%. They would have squashed me like a bug, and there'd have been nothing that I could do about it because there was just only so many ways to do something like this, you know?
Hmm.
Now all they did was blow me up. All they did was help me. You know what I mean? Like, everything from my podcast listens to my subscribers on Substack, everything else is just astronomically higher than it was before they started it.
Good.
And,
Wow.
and you got to be grateful that that's the case, but also recognizing that a lot of people who went before, a lot of the people whose work I draw on, you're probably drawing on, those people
Hmm.
paid the price so that,
Hmm.
we could kind of move out there and talk about a lot of these things.